Good morning and welcome to Live Without Limits. Unlock your potential, the ultimate blueprint to transform and shift your mindset. I'm Davida Shinsky, and in this show, we're diving into a topic where we dive deep into healing the parts of ourselves that don't always get enough attention. Today we're talking about something so many of us carries quietly, the deep emotional marks left behind when we become treated badly, and why those feelings can linger much longer than we expect. Take a moment and think back to a time when someone mistreated you. Maybe it was something obvious, like harsh words, betrayal, or abandonment. Or maybe it was more subtle, being overlooked, dismissed, or constantly criticized. And that's the big one, being criticized. Whatever the situation, the emotional wounds it leaves behind, they matter. And here's the thing, often those people who mistreat you is because they have low self-esteem about themselves, but it's also the fact that this is the way they were brought up and this is how they were treated, so they don't know how to be any different. And the sad part is they don't even want to change. Being mistreated doesn't just hurt in the moment, it leaves marks, deep emotional imprints that shape how we see ourselves, how we trust others, and even how we move through the world. And here's the thing, if those feelings aren't fully acknowledged, they don't just disappear with time. They linger, they echo, they find small, painful ways to show up, sometimes years later, in our relationships, our work, or even our self talk. And I'm going to break here and talk about a theory known as transactional analysis, because the way that works is you've got the mother, or rather, you've got the parent, you've got the adult, and you got the child. The child says, I want. The adult says, I'm able to. And the parent says, you should. And often the things they say to you and how they tell it to you are the things that you hear and then internalize, and then you start repeating them to yourself simply because that's what you've been told and it's so ingrained in you. And that's why when we talk about the laws of attraction and we talk about the positive and the negative and how it can conflict with each other and bang up against each other, then what happens? It's like you have to think of it as, how am I going to retrain or get rid of those negative thoughts and make them positive ones? So and often, so what I'm getting at is that the tapes you hear in the head, you are hearing them because they've been told to you over and over again. And how do you get rid of them? So when we're talking about the wound doesn't heal, that it festers, that's how it festers in our relationships. That's our self-talk. So why do these unresolved feelings stick around for so long? Part of it's because when we're hurt, especially by someone we trust, a parent, a sibling, a teacher, it creates confusion. We want to believe people are good. We want to believe we deserve better. But if we never fully process what happened, if we brush it off, minimize it, or tell ourselves to just move on, the wound doesn't heal. It festers. Unresolved emotions don't stay hidden. They leak out as anxiety. They harden into anger or resentment. They turn into self doubt, where we start questioning our worth because of someone else's poor behavior. And this doesn't mean you're weak for still feeling it. It means you're human. Emotional health requires that we honor what we've been through, that we make space for the parts of us still carrying the pain, not to drown it out, but to understand it, tend to it, and eventually release it. So today's episode, we're going to start the journey together, acknowledging the hurt, the understanding, why it's still here, and taking the first steps towards healing, because you deserve to feel light again. You deserve to live free from the past. So let's get deeper into it. But I just want to remind you that the title of today's show is The Unspoken Wounds, Healing Unresolved Feelings After Being Treated Badly. Because you have to learn how to take care of yourself and how to retrain your thoughts. So, what we're going to do first is talk about recognizing the pain. Now that we've acknowledged how deeply mistreatment can wound us, let's talk about how those wounds actually show up in our lives, even when we think we've moved on. What are the first signs of unresolved hurt or anger? And sometimes it's not even the loud, explosive kind. It can be that low, simmering irritation you feel towards people or situations that seem unrelated. It's that short fuse, the impatience, or even the exhaustion you experience when you're constantly holding in emotions you were never allowed to fully express. Then there's sadness, a quiet, heavy grief that sticks around even when things are going well. Maybe you notice a sense of emptiness, a feeling that something is missing, or you might catch yourself thinking, I should be happy, but I'm not. That sadness can be a leftover echo of the pain you never got to properly grieve. And of course, there's withdrawal. Maybe you found yourself pulling away from people. Maybe you have a hard time trusting anyone, even the ones who genuinely care. Or maybe you've built strong walls to keep yourself safe, but now those same walls are keeping you isolated and lonely. These are not just personality quirks, they are often signs that parts of you are still carrying unprocessed pain. And recognizing these signs isn't about blaming yourself, it's about becoming aware. Awareness is the first and most powerful step toward healing. And here's something to think about. I really want you to hear today. You are not overreacting. Your pain is real. Your experience matters. Validation is crucial. When you validate your feelings instead of gaslighting yourself by saying things like it wasn't that bad or I should just get over it. You give yourself permission to heal because healing can't happen if you're still trying to convince yourself that the hurt wasn't a big deal. And let's be honest, so often when people mistreat us, they minimize it. They might tell us we're too sensitive, or they might completely deny their behavior ever happened. When that happens, it's easy to start questioning yourself. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe it really was my fault. You know, my younger sister always liked to take control, and she was always very abusive. And my mother covered up her behavior and talked about how good she was doing. Why? Because there was three sisters, the two older ones have disabilities, and she was considered the perfect one because she didn't have a disability. But yet, she was the one who had the biggest disability because she was allowed to get away with lying. She was allowed to get away with abusing people, and my mother covered up for her. And because she covered up for her, she has a hard time maintaining friends. There's a lot. She resents her sisters supposedly because they got more attention. But that's not it. It's that she only wanted to be the one that got everything. She's jealous of if you give someone else a little bit more time than her or do a little bit more for her, she's very jealous and very bitter and very angry because she thinks she should have everything. And she'll walk in your house and she's always got a big handbag. And and when you're not looking, she'll take things and take them with her because she wants them. I've I've had things go missing and I wonder where they are and can't find them and realize she must have taken them. She's taken my parking permits. She's taken a vase from me. She's walked out with food just simply because I happen to get food stamps and she wants food that she doesn't have to pay for. So you just got to remember people like that are never going to change. And the best way to deal with them is to have very little to do with them. But minimizing or ignoring mistreatment doesn't erase it. It just buries it deeper. And what's buried eventually grows into something even harder to deal with. Resentment, bitterness, disconnection from yourself and others. When you don't allow yourself to fully acknowledge what happened and how it made you feel, you lock that pain inside. It becomes an invisible filter through which you see the world, a fiber, or rather, a filter that keeps you small, guarded, and afraid. Today, I want to invite you to do the opposite. Instead of minimizing your hurt, honor it. Instead of ignoring your feelings, get curious about them because your feelings are not the enemy. They're messages. They are your body and soul asking you to come home to yourself, to listen, to heal, to move forward stronger and freer than before. But it's also to be your authentic self, that person that you were always meant to be. Why feelings stay stuck? Now, we'll talk about recognizing the signs of unresolved hurt. Let's go a little deeper into why the pain can get so stuck and how it shapes us in ways we don't always realize. When someone betrays us, disappoints us, or humiliates us, it creates more than just a passing hurt. It can create what I like to call emotional blockages, invisible walls inside of us that stop energy, trust, and love from flowing freely. Think about it. When you're betrayed by someone you trusted, you might tell yourself, I'll never let anyone get that close again. When you're deeply disappointed by someone you counted on, you might start believing, I can only rely on myself. And when you're humiliated, especially publicly or by someone you cared about, you might internalize that moment and think, there's something wrong with me. Each of these experiences can trap emotions like fear, anger, grief, or shame inside of us. But instead of being allowed to express those emotions and let them move through us, we often suppress them. Maybe because it wasn't safe to express them. Maybe because no one validated your pain. Maybe because we were taught that strong people just move on. Now, there's one more thing that I want to say, that we have a comfort zone that we live in, and we have to learn to get beyond that comfort zone in order to change our behavior. And often we don't realize that we attract people who are going to keep us in that comfort zone. And only unless you get out of that and change your behavior, then you will always seem to attract people who will constantly abuse you, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally. So, they show up in our future relationships. Now, let's backtrack a little bit here so that we can say this right. Suppressed emotions don't actually go away. They get stored in our bodies, in our nervous system, and in our unconscious minds. They sit beneath the surface, waiting, and often they show up when we least expect it. They show up in future relationships where we're quick to mistrust or easily triggered. They show up when we push good people away because getting close feels too risky. They show up when small disappointments hit us harder than they should because they're tapping into a much older wound. And perhaps most heartbreakingly, unresolved pain feeds into something even deeper, self-doubt and negative self-image. You might start to believe, maybe I deserved it, or maybe I'm just too much. Maybe I'm not enough. The way someone treated you, especially if it was repeatedly or by someone important can start to feel like a reflection of your worth, even though it absolutely is not. Pain that isn't healed often turns inward. It becomes self blame, self criticism, self abandonment. And here's the truth: you were never unworthy. You were never too much. You were never not enough. The way someone treated you says everything about them and nothing about your value. But until we acknowledge the process, the pain, it's easy for the mind to, to leave damaging stories about ourselves, stories that affect how we show up in every part of our lives. The good news is this: once we see the pattern, once we understand the source, we can start to untangle it. We can begin separating from who we are from what we experienced. It's as I said, my parents both came from homes where it was very toxic, very negative. There was always screaming and yelling in my father's home. There was always screaming and yelling in my mother's home. And both of them took those same behaviors. And when you get two people who have a relationship where both come from toxic families, what are they doing? They're creating a toxic relationship with their own children that, unless they're willing to learn how to parent and how to show love and how to treat people, nothing is going to change. It will pass on from generation to generation until someone decides they had enough and they are not going to put up with it and they want to change. Moving through the emotions. You're doing such important work by staying with this conversation. And now I want to talk about the next step in unresolved hurt: naming the feelings, allowing them to surface, and creating space for real healing. One of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is to stop running from your emotions and instead name them. It sounds simple, but it's actually a radical act of self love. You might be feeling anger at the person who mistreated you, at the injustice of it all, or how long it's taken you to realize the depth of the hurt. It might be feeling grief, mourning the relationship you thought you had, or that part of you that got wounded in the process. You might be feeling fear, fear that it could happen again, fear that you're not safe to trust or open your heart. And underneath it all, you might be carrying shame, that hidden, heavy belief that somehow the mistreatment was your fault. These feelings are not wrong. They're not a sign that you're broken or too sensitive. They are perfectly valid responses to being treated badly, and naming them brings them out of the shadows where they have the most power and into the light where they can finally begin to heal. Or how do we work through these feelings safely? One powerful tool is journaling, writing gives your emotions a voice when speaking feels too overwhelming. You can start by simply writing, "Today I feel," and finish the sentence. And let whatever comes out come out. No editing, no judgment, just honesty. Another tool is therapy. Finding a trained professional who can help you navigate your emotions, challenge false beliefs about yourself, and create a safe container for your healing. And sometimes safe conversations with trusted friends or support groups can be incredibly healing. Not everyone deserves access to your vulnerable heart, but sharing your story with someone who listens without judgment, without rushing you to move on, can be transformative. Here's something I want you to remember deeply. You are allowed to feel everything you feel. You don't have to minimize it. You don't have to rush through it. You don't have to prove that your pain is real. Giving yourself permission to feel without judgment is one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself. You know, before I go on, there was a period of time when I had no contact with my mother because she was very abusive to me, and and I just knew that I didn't need to be around her. And then when she tried to get back in touch with me through someone else, I wrote her a letter and I told her how I felt about how she had treated me. And do you know that her attitude was, "How can you say that? That's not true." So it just shows you that those people that are abusive, they're so out of touch of what they're feeling about themselves or the behavior they're doing because they don't know any different, and they won't seek out help to understand why they do what they do. So it's okay to be angry. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel fear. It's okay to acknowledge shame and then gently remind yourself, this feeling is not my identity. It's just something I'm carrying and I can put it down. Healing doesn't happen by forcing yourself to be okay. Healing yourself by allowing yourself to be real. Now, what I want to say here is when you understand that you have a right to feel what you feel, whether or not someone acknowledges that they are influencing your behavior by the things they do to you, because they don't see it as anything being wrong in what they're doing, because it was probably something that happened to them and they came out, or what they thought they came out okay. But in reality, they have their own issues that they have buried so deeply and don't even acknowledge that that's why they're treating you so badly. Setting boundaries with the past and the people. And this is why I say sometimes you have to get away from those people who are abusing you, because they will continue to do what they do because they think they have a right to do it, but also because they don't know boundaries. that they don't understand other people's boundaries. So, we've talked about naming your feelings, honoring your pain, and beginning the healing process. Now, let's take it to the step further. Reclaiming your dignity through boundaries, understanding forgiveness, and freeing yourself from needing validation from those who hurt you. Let's talk about boundaries. When you've been mistreated, one of the most empowering things you can do is rebuild the protective walls around your heart, not to shut the world out, but honor your worth. Boundaries aren't about punishing others, they're about protecting yourself. They're about saying, I matter, my peace matters, my emotional safety matters. And this is why, in my case, because of the environment that I grew up in, was the comfort zone, and often that's what I seemed to attract to me. And I knew that that's not what I wanted or the kind of relationship I wanted. And then, because I didn't have a lot of mobility due to my disability, it also limited the contacts. So I didn't always get out and interact with people, although I often made an attempt to, because my personality is to be very outgoing, to have strong interpersonal skills, to be able to talk to strangers. And I think that's why I was able to, considering the negativity in the environment and what was going on and how people with disabilities were treated, it led for me to become my own advocate, to make sure that I got my rights that I deserve. And I learned that the best thing I can do is stay away from those people who abuse me, because they're never going to change, and they're going to try and constantly pull me back into their comfort zone. And I do not want that. So you have to understand what happens. So setting boundaries can sound like, I no longer engage with people who belittle me. I choose not to explain myself to those who twist my words. I am allowed to step away from relationships that make me feel small. Now, I want to talk a little bit about personalities, because if you're someone who's very introverted, and then you're going to continue to allow yourself to stay within that comfort zone. If you're more of an extrovert, you're willing to find ways to get out of it. And often it depends on someone's personality as well as their desire to get out of that environment. Each time you set a boundary, you send a message to yourself. I am worthy of respect from others and from myself. And that, my friend, is how you start reclaiming your dignity piece by piece, choice by choice. Now let's talk about something that's often misunderstood: forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It's not about excusing the mistreatment. And it's definitely not about letting someone back into your life who has not earned the privilege. Now, I'm going to dwell on this last one, this one. It's definitely not about letting someone back into your life who has not earned it. Because if you allow them back into your life, they think they have a right to continue treating you the way they do, even though you're stating boundaries. So you have to make sure they're aware that if you're allowing them back into your life, they have to change how they treat you. And if they don't want to, then they shouldn't be in your life. Forgiveness is a choice. It's about freeing yourself from carrying the weight of resentment. It's about saying, I will not allow what you did to define me or control me anymore. You do not owe forgiveness to anyone. It's something you offer. And if and when you are ready, and it's something you offer for your own peace, not to make someone else's be better. And here's one of the hardest truths, but also one of the most liberating. You may never get the apology or a validation you deserve. You may never hear them say, I'm sorry I hurt you. You may never hear them acknowledge the pain they caused. And while that's incredibly painful, clinging to the hope of an apology and keep you trapped in a cycle of waiting for closure that only you can truly give yourself. You don't need their apology to heal. You don't need their validation to move forward. You have the power to give yourself the closure you deserve. You have the power to say, I see what happened. I feel the pain. I honor it. And I choose to heal even without their acknowledgement. Setting boundaries, choosing forgiveness or not, releasing the need for an apology. Each of these steps isn't about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your story, reclaiming your power, reclaiming you, turning pain into growth. You've done some deep work with me today. And now it's time to talk about the most beautiful part of healing, how pain, once processed, can transform into power. When you've been treated badly, it's easy at first to think it only left destruction in its wake. But with time, reflection, and compassion, there are powerful lessons hidden in that pain. Lessons that help you redefine your self-worth and self-respect on your own terms. Mistreatment forces us to comfort an essential truth. You are not defined by how someone treated you. Your worth isn't negotiable. Your dignity is not up for debate. And you are allowed, in fact, you are empowered to raise your standards for how you expect to be treated moving forward. Through your experiences, you start to realize I will no longer tolerate people who make me doubt my value. I will no longer explain my worth to those committed to misunderstanding me. I will no longer sacrifice my peace to keep someone else comfortable. You get clear on your boundaries. You get clear on your needs. You get clear on the environment and the people that nourish you rather than drain you. And from that clarity comes something even more powerful, purpose, passion, personal empowerment. The emotions you once buried, the anger, the grief, the fear, even the shame, they don't have to control you. They can be fuel it to create stronger relationships, fuel to rebuild the life you truly deserve, fuel to advocate for yourself and others, fuel to tap into passions you once put aside because you didn't believe that you were enough. Your pain can awaken part of you that had been sleeping. Your courage, your voice, your resilience, your empathy. It can teach you how to stand taller. It can teach you how to love yourself more fiercely. It can teach you how to create a life that feels aligned, authentic, and truly yours. The road to healing isn't just about pretending the hurt never happened. It's about saying, yes, it happened. Yes, it hurt. And still, here I am, standing, growing, thriving. You are not your wounds. You are your healing. You are your courage. You are your comeback story in progress. So, thank you for trusting me to walk this path and this part of the journey with you today. I hope you leave this episode not just with insight, but with a deep knowing you have everything you need inside you to heal, to grow, and to reclaim your power. If this episode resonated with you, I invite you to to take one small step today. Journal your thoughts, talk to someone you trust, or simply give yourself a moment of kindness. Pat yourself on the back. You deserve it. Before we end today's conversation, I want to leave you with something important to remember. Healing is a process, not a switch that you can flip on and off. There's no magic moment where everything suddenly feels perfect. Healing often happens quietly, gradually, and in small steps, small choices, and small acts of courage that add up over time. Some days you'll feel strong and clear. Other days, the old pain might tug at your heart again. And both of these experiences are part of the journey. Neither one means you're failing. The goal isn't to erase the pain or pretend it never happened. The goal is to honor it, to acknowledge it, the hurt, to learn from it without letting it control your life. You are allowed to carry your experiences without letting it define you or your future. You are allowed to feel the pain without being consumed by it. And most importantly, you are allowed to move forward with strength, with clarity, and with deeper, unshakable connections to yourself. Because every time you choose to honor your healing, every time you choose to set a boundary, every time you choose to treat yourself with compassion, you're reclaiming your life. You're not who the pain tried to make you think you are. You are who you decide to become, strong, wise, and free. So thank you so much for being here and being with me today. This episode spoke to you, your heart. I invite you to take a deep breath right now and silently remind yourself, I am healing, I am growing, I am enough, and you are doing incredible work. Now, here's one more thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. I have a saying that I keep on my computer that I look at every morning, and it comes from Carl Jung, and it says, I am not what happened to me. It is what I choose to become.